Mr. Michael Cruz. How you doing today, sir?
Joey, I'm doing great.
Michael, I want to know this before we really get into anything too serious. And I want to know what activity maybe have you spent the most time doing that has really amounted to absolutely nothing?
Man, I think that's the first time somebody has ever asked me that. I feel like there's a lot of things I do in my agency that I feel like sometimes I don't see where the time goes or the results, or like I ask myself, what did I do today? So I think it's more sometimes the days in my agency where I can feel like that because I'm getting pulled in so many different directions.
Yeah, fair enough. And for me, Michael, it's really simple. I've spent more time looking at restaurant menus that I have never eaten at in my entire life. I've got meals planned. I've never eaten them. I will never eat them. But that's just very frustrating.
Actually, I just thought of something. I have this habit of window shopping for homes, even though like I have no intentions of moving anytime soon. But yeah, I'm always looking through Redfin listings and seeing in my market what's out there. So yeah, and that doesn't go anywhere. So
Just you wonder what you're doing with your time and wondering why this even matters to you, but yet you continue to do it. Well, Michael, you already sort of touched upon it in the agency, but that was sort of the question that maybe we could dive a little deeper on in terms of, again, there's, like you said, there's a lot in the world of insurance. Where do you feel like maybe you struggle with, like, where are those activities that you kind of find yourself falling into that black hole, right? Where it feels like you're not getting anywhere. You want to get progress on something. What is really sort of that challenge for you right now to where you feel like you spend more time than you get out of it?
I think it's a lot of the little things where the customers are reaching out to you directly, your team is reaching out to you directly, and sometimes I just feel like I'm a really highly paid customer service agent for my team and my customers, where that really kind of hurts sometimes the creativity because you feel like you're doing something that's not as productive. I feel like that's a lot kind of where you know sometimes as business owners we're in that journey, especially at the beginning, where you're working really hard but it doesn't feel that rewarding because it's repetitive things, is the switch tasking of going from one thing to another. And even though you're making progress, and even though in perspective everything is going well, but that creative side is not really being stimulated.
That's interesting that you say the creative side, and most people would not associate that with insurance per se. But I guess maybe take me into the mindset of how you approach the business creatively, and just even the world of insurance. Like, how do you try to think about things differently? Like, again, I don't know that I've ever heard somebody even really use that phrase when talking about their business before.
Yeah, I think it's the whole expression of working on the business instead of in the business. Maybe is coming up with the next strategy, mapping out what the next process is, looking at more closely what your quoting process is, or the way you service the agency. And sometimes you have all these projects. Maybe it's like working on content. It took me a few years to get to a point where I am able to create video, where I've always wanted to do it, but just never had the time. Maybe it's creating more training. So I feel like sometimes as business owners and in the agency, we're so busy in it that it's really hard to find the time to work on these exciting things where you can build something, hand it to the team, and then the team is doing it, and you're like, oh my god, I created that. I built something from scratch and it's actually working.
How do you feel that process has gone for you? Like, maybe get some context around like how long it's been, like to get to this point to where you feel like you have the opportunity to work on the business as opposed to in it. And it still sounds like you're often met with a little frustration there as to the time you actually can give it that you maybe want.
I think it's really helped that from the beginning I've had that mindset. I've met the right people that kind of shift my mindset early on. Hey, you're doing all the jobs, but every time you're doing a job, I want you to think about what hat you have on, because eventually someone else is going to be doing that job. Maybe it's the intake of the quote process. Maybe that's your in quote intake person. Maybe it's the actual quoting of the process. That's going to be another person. So once you staff the agency with enough people, and once you're organized and you get really good at delegating, which is kind of where most agency owners get stuck, then you realize, oh my god, a whole day goes by, sometimes, and you have a lot of freedom with what you can do. You're not caught in the day to day sometimes as well, because there are days where you're not pulled in that many different directions, because you're not the only one answering the phone. You're not the only one doing quotes. You're not the only one selling or servicing. So
Let's see. I don't know if you can do this for me, but can you give me the last job you just took the hat off of and finally got rid of? Like, what was that job that you finally took the hat off and got rid of, and it's not yours anymore? What's the job that you're currently doing that you can't wait to not do anymore?
I kind of took a step back on sales about a year ago, and I hired a commercial producer, and he was the main one doing commercial sales. And I've taken that job back because that producer didn't work out. That was kind of something that I took off, and now I'm putting back on. But for example, the personalized sales, for the longest time I've been disconnected. I have a really solid team. The leads come in. We have staff that takes in the lead information. Then we have staff that quotes it. Then we have staff that actually calls back and presents a quote. So all of that, I used to be very involved. I'm not involved as much anymore. Also the service side. Every time something broke, I had to be the one that had to fix it. Any fire, anything like that. Now I have a really solid service team that learn, how to solve problems. And the stuff that get to me is some legitimate stuff like, hey, I've tried, but now you gotta, the buck stops with you. So you got to figure that one out.
Couple things that are interesting from there. I think, kind of, it sounds like getting into the world of commercial, like where do you guys like to focus? I mean, it's something that you're taking on. I'm assuming it's, you guys maybe started as personal, expanding into commercial. What's that journey look like for you? And where do you hope to take the commercial side of the business?
Yeah. So we're, like most, a generalist, but I think what I've gotten good at is understanding that having the discipline to say no. And through the National Alliance, the sales dynamic class that they teach, I've been through different programs like the Erie producer overdrive, the Liberty Mutual producer class that they had. All these things have taught me one thing, and it's that you have to break up the sales process. When someone is calling in, you got to pre-qualify that person. It's not about just taking in the information and start quoting. So you got to make sure that they're ready to make a switch. You got to make sure that this is the type of risk that is gonna, be within the appetite of the carriers that you have, because otherwise it's just going to be a waste of time. It's very time consuming. And then making sure that they're willing to play the game, right? If they're not willing to follow my rules, then I'm going to waste my time. I'm going to waste your time. So that's kind of been the whole mindset with the commercial process. Niche wise, I work on contractors, restaurants, but what I've really learned is like I need to build a case. So by the time that my underwriter gets this case, I've already painted a picture. I already kind of know the questions that he's going to have concerns with. And I also kind of prepare and coach the prospect, saying, based on our conversation, these are the things that I need you to get me so that I can present my case to my underwriter. Because I already know if I send this in, this is exactly what he's going to ask me. And I know, like, if you don't give me what I need, I'm going to waste my time because my underwriter is going to ask me that information anyway.
I have definitely heard quality of submission, like putting the best submissions together more than once in my time. And it's certainly something that people pay attention to. Is there anything that I guess you maybe listen to or have found works well when trying to paint that picture that you found success with? Again, like you said, like making sure that information is there, because again, it sounds like it is more of a sales job once that information is collected to the underwriter, like, hey, listen, give these guys a chance, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's selling always the next step, right? The next step is, I really need to see where you are. I really need to make sure that I can help you. And that's the first step, right? Once we get to that step, now I'm going to help you realize, like, I'm going to help you find where things that you didn't even think they were an issue, So the whole being a consultant, being an advisor, making sure that you're taken care of. So I think it's just, worrying about the next step. The next step is for me to get everything that I need so that I can show you that I can help you, instead of like just worrying about the end result, and kind of focusing on one step at a time of the next stage of the sales process.
And so I guess, I mean, from an agency operations perspective, again, expanding into different lines and different areas, like what are you guys working on next? Like what's the next thing on your plate? Like what's sort of off on the horizon that you feel, man, if I could just do that? Or there's probably something you're tinkering with, I would imagine.
I would say the commercial side is really right now one of the biggest focus is how to get back into it, how to build all the process that we have on the personal side, on the commercial side. Also my sales process, how to even, we already have a good solid process, but how do you even get it to the next level? I feel like there's been a lot of investment on my team and focus on the service side, where we've been able now to really get it to a point where when someone is off, it hurts the team in terms of we're doing a little bit more labor, but it's not chaos. Everything is organized. People know, where things are, how we're going to handle things. The sales process, because salespeople are a little bit different, as you know, so that's going to be the next big project, is how to get the salespeople to believe in me and say, hey guys, we have to do this because I want you guys to take more time off. And when you take the time off, I don't want you to think I'm going to lose those leads, because we have a process, right? We have a process, the way it's going to come in, the way we're going to quote it, the way we're going to present it. So we can all have better work-life balance, so we can, get to a better standard way of doing business. And it doesn't matter who that referral source deals with an agency, you're going to get the same experience and the same process, So that's kind of where my next step is right now, personal lines and commercial, in terms of the sales process.
This is an interesting question. What sort of hesitations have you had? What I mean, pushback's a strong word, but like in terms of the sales team adopting things, I'm assuming it's always like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, am I going to get the? There's always something, right? Like, what's the thing that's sort of holding them back? How are you looking to sort of navigate and sort of work your way around it?
I think, everybody wants to think that their way is the best way. And people sometimes, don't like change, because change means like, now I got to get out of my comfort zone and try something new. So I think it's a little bit of that, but what I try to tell my team is like, look, like at the end of the day, I'm the one that took the risk with this business. I don't like to pull this card, but I want you to understand, like, whatever I'm doing is to help us. It's not just to, because I woke up today and I decided, hey, this is the way we're gonna do things. No, like, it's me. While you guys are working, I'm even if I'm off the clock, I'm thinking, how do I improve my business? How do I improve my business? So 24/7, that's in the back of my mind. So sometimes it's a matter of like really having those tough conversations that say, hey, this is the way we're gonna do it. And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I want you to at least try this thing that we're doing. And sometimes I'm also involving them in that process, that creative process of, let's talk about map out what that whole process is. Doesn't mean I'm going to accept every idea you have, but I want to listen to what you have to say so that you own that process as well, right? It's not just Michael created this process for me, but it's just getting this producer out of the mindset that their process is so special. It's not. A lot of people, what it taught me is like, if you're not role playing with your producers, you're going to find out some harsh reality that a lot of people are winging it, and they're not as sharp as they think they are. And it's okay, right? Like, I think we all have room for improvement, and that's the reason why you want to standardize, right? Because then I can actually role play with you what the process is. I can spot check it. I can make sure that you're doing it right, and then I can duplicate that process. Because if Susie's doing her way and this other person is doing her way, then I can't teach that. I can't scale that.
Can you take me inside maybe like one of those, instances where you're, going back and forth with a producer, and like where you sort of see something that they thought was amazing, you're like, man, this is not working, or how do you sort of negotiate that with them? And like, what are some tips or tricks that you have for everybody to sharpen the sword a little bit?
I think at the end of the day, it's just, with people, slow is fast. So it's just, acknowledging what they're saying. Let me think about it. We don't have to make this change today. And then coming back and like, hey, I thought about it, and this is why, I want to, change that a little bit and do it this way. And then just taking your time, not being so drastic with things, and really trying to explain to people at the beginning, like, why you're doing what you're doing, so that they're invested and they understand the reasoning, and they buy in. The buy-in is the biggest thing. You got to get people to buy in, but it's also a culture. It just takes time to get everybody on the same page, and having the same mindset, just like, for example, like, helping the agency to create content on what we're doing. Right. So like, that whole quoting process that we just created, we need to document this so that if we get a new producer, we can have that producer watch the video, review the document. Before, it was just me doing that process. Now, over the years, I've gotten my whole team invested in creating processes, and we kind of can divide up the documentation of creating process. So it's a little bit more manageable, to compound the efforts of, a few people contributing to this.
Yeah, that almost sounds like a magic trick in and of itself to get them to do that. How long did it take before the team fully bought into that point?
It was a process, right? So what I do is, like, I tell you what the biggest one right now is, a few years ago, was Loom. I started using Loom for my sales process. Basically, I would send video proposals, and then I started using Loom for service things. So basically, we have a renewal. I would pull up the current deck, the renewal deck, going side by side. And one day I saw one of my CSRs like typing this really long email. It took her like 30 minutes. She's like, Michael, can you review this for me, please, before I send it? I want to make sure that, I'm not missing anything. And just me reading it, it was like so exhausting. I'm like, oh, no, we can't do this. There's got to be a better way. And that's when it hit me. All right, no, I think the best way, this is a 5-minute video, even a 3-minute video that you can do. And visually, the customer is going to understand what you're saying because you're showing your screen, And it was one of those things where, how in home insurance you have bundles where you can, package, coverages, and try to understand somebody, hey, look, to get that coverage, I have to add this bundle. And this bundle has all these little extra coverages inside of it. But if I can show you visually, it just makes a lot more sense than me typing this long email trying to explain to you, how does that work, the logistic, mechanically, how it works on the back end.
so much of it, like you said, like just creating a better experience for the consumer, right? And making it easier for them. Is there anything else that you've kind of any other secrets that you have in terms of that unlocking that sort of like, hey, this is better for them, like we can do it this way, that you guys have come across?
I think leading by example. It took me doing a bunch of these videos, sending it to them. Sometimes they would ask me questions. Hey, Michael, how do you do this? I would go and create a Loom video and show it to them. And over time, little things I would, say, hey, can you create a quick walkthrough video for that? And it just takes time, but you have to keep touching on it, keep reminding them. It's not going to happen overnight, but eventually now, like my team, for example, with a lot of these rate increases, it's been awesome because the customer calls in extremely upset. Hey, my rate went up X amount, and now we're training the team. Hey, thank you so much for calling. I see your renewal is not a month from now. What I want to do is I want to schedule a time for me to review your policy, make sure that everything is up to date. Let me ask you some questions to make sure that you're taking advantage of all the available discounts, and then I can send you a video that you can watch. And what we're finding with these videos, we can create them at our own time, and people are watching it like either before work or usually after work, late at night. They're being watched over and over, and the feedback we're getting is like, Michael, this was so helpful. Thank you so much for doing this video. And when the staff sees that, it just reinforces like, hey, this is the right thing to do. And it also becomes a little bit easier on them in terms of the workload.
So if we could rewind things all the way back to, you just starting out and, there's maybe something that you feel was a pivotal moment in sort of getting to this point now. If you could bestow that information upon somebody that might be at a similar crossroads, what would that be? And what would you say to them?
I think for me was hiring a coach. His name was Joe Hagan with Freedom Through Systems, and he was kind of the coach of agency owners for Erie Insurance. I saw him at a Zanatech. Zanatech used to have these workshops that they would teach you how to use their management system better, and they would hire him to kind of that was the system that he used. And I ended up hiring him for a year as my coach. And he's the one that kind of like shifted my mindset, like, how to delegate to the low cost labor to the low cost employee, the high, cost labor to the high cost employee. Just like a law firm, the doctors, everybody do it, and just shifting that mindset. Like you're building a business. You have to standardize the way you do business. You have to document it so that you can scale. You can teach it. You can spot check it. So I really think that was the one that did it for me. I guess I believed in it. It made sense to me, and I can tell you today I'm living that experience. But it takes a long time, and sometimes it can get a little bit frustrating. You can get a little bit lazy because nothing is changing dramatically when you're documenting the process. You're like, all right, I did that. It's done. I did all this work. Nothing has changed. But once you start like bringing on employees and you realize, oh my God, I have all these things that I have to transfer to this employee in terms of knowledge. But hey, you have all these things already written down in the process. It's just a lot easier. So you start seeing it kind of compound over time. But I would say that was my pivotal moment, is just hiring help early on, even though I probably couldn't afford it. But it really helped me build that foundation to scale.
All right, Michael, I've got 3 more questions for you. And the first one is, what's one thing you hope you never forget?
I hope I never forget that there is magic and a huge benefit of longevity and committing to doing something for a long period of time until you become really good at it. It becomes easier and easier over time because, this last few months for me have been that, right? Like the first few years of my career, I feel like everything that I was doing, the effort that I was putting in, it was not the result that I was getting back. I felt like I was overworking and being overworked and underpaid. Where like now, it feels like the opposite. I'm still working extremely hard, but now I can actually see the things I'm doing is moving the needle, and I'm seeing compound results because it's not just me doing the work. So I think if I could just kind of keep reminding myself, because I had many kind of come to Jesus moments with myself. I'm like, am I doing the right thing? I don't have any work-life balance. You're not making the money that you want to make, and you're putting all this work, but just convincing myself, sticking there, be patient. You need to get better at what you do. That's going to help you make life easier and get more results. So that's really what I would kind of remind myself again to keep in mind.
Now, on the other side of that, Michael, what's one thing you still have yet to learn?
I guess I'm still trying to figure that out. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. Actually, that's a really good question.
Well, that's your next thing to learn, is figure out what you need to learn next. All right, Michael, last question to you, sir. If I were to hand you a magic wand of sorts to reshape, change, alter, speed up, really any part of insurance, what's that thing? Where is it going? And what's it doing?
I would say just really building my training library, so that it allows me, to scale, to really help me. Um, if I can overnight build that dream training library that I'm able to staff and scale very easily because I have this solid foundation of how to transfer knowledge to people and things like that.
Michael, this has been fantastic, sir. I'm going to leave it right there.
All right, thank you, Joey.